Good evening, people, believers and non-believers. My name is Anthony Crank, and I'm here to welcome you to the very first edition of Project Grey Book, presented by Comedy Hotspot and powered by jokepit.com. I need to put my teeth in. Joining me tonight are our two resident experts, two very special guests. First off, it's our very own Little Green Man. He's one of the UK's most established, most well-loved stand-up comics and one-time Northwest Comedian of the Year back in 1937, as well as being recently seen in the movie Funny Cow opposite Maxine Peake and Alan Armstrong, and recently in Coronation Street as well. He is also a ufology and extraterrestrial expert and all-round nut. Please give it up for Steve Harris. Hello, Steve.
Hi, mate. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's a joy to be amongst fellow weirdos and nutcases. I feel comfortable. We're going to be discussing a few subjects that people know about, people might not know about, but we've gone for two big subjects that generate a lot of conversation and interest.
And who's your mate next to you?
Oh, this is Skinny Bob.
Skinny Bob, welcome, Skinny Bob. I hope he delves in as well with us, and also to welcome our very special guest. He's come all the way from 2014 when he was runner-up in Britain's Got Talent. He's also a well-loved stand-up comedian and established comedy actor as well. You've seen him in Sky One's Trolleyed, BBC's Ministry of Curious Stuff, and also in the recent hit movie Eaten by Lions. Please give it up for the very fragrant Jack Carroll. Hello, Jack.
Now then, how are you doing, lads?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not so bad. Ready to get into some craziness.
Have you had your tea?
I have. I'm ready. I've had my tea.
Good.
I've carb loaded to get on with this UFO stuff.
You're going to need it because we're going to be sweating by the time it's 20 to 8. Okay, so premise of the show, Steve, you've just mentioned, we're just going to delve into the world of UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials and all that stuff that we are firm believers in more than anything. Also, we want to get the audience involved as well. If you're watching at home, if you're listening as well, get involved by commenting to the right in the boxes of the right of the screen as well. And also let us know where you're watching from as well. We'll give you a shout as much as we can. Okay, we're going to kick it off now. We're going to talk about the news that happened over the weekend. We had a little change in our schedule, didn't we? Because we couldn't, if we'd have missed this, it would have been a bloody travesty. Just north of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, a city called Magé, thousands of people witnessed lights in the sky, sparking social media panic and conspiracies as well. There's video evidence, not only of the lights, plenty of videos hanging around the internet as well. Mentions of a crash site as well in one of the small rainforests. And people are saying posts disappeared from social media as it started to trend. What happened?
Well, that's what generated my interest in the first place, because I heard last week that there'd been a UFO crash in Brazil, but obviously I've got my ear to the ground with this kind of thing. I'm always listening. So I kind of just put it on the back burner and then went and investigated. And what really piqued my interest was I was reading a thread, I think it was on Twitter or somewhere, and it just disappeared as I was reading it. And then I went on to watch some videos, and there was some quite good videos on the thread there. And then they all disappeared, and it was replaced with a montage that had really nothing to do. There was one bit where there was the explosion where the craft crashed into the forest, and it was all going off, and you could hear gunshots. That's bit's real, but then it was interspersed with some drone footage from Mexico. So somebody had cobbled that together to discredit it.
So did you see it as well, Jack? What's your take on the Magé crash?
Yeah, I saw that. Well, the fact that there seems to be a lack of coverage for it, because the only proper article I could find was the Express article, and then the rest of it seemed to be suppressed in a sort of way, which did get my if you're going down the road that this is something that wouldn't like to stake a claim as to what that they want to keep covered up, then there does seem to be a suppression of information, especially in these early days.
Sorry, Anthony, go on.
Well, why the censorship, Steve? Why are they pulling stories from social media? What's your take on that?
I think maybe it's because of the current pandemic. They don't want to excite people anymore or worry them anymore. But also as well, it's real. It's true. It's actually happened, and they don't want it out there. So I know that there was journalists that got their equipment taken from them, and a lot of the general public that were filming got the phones taken and all the accounts taken down and all that kind of stuff. And one of the videos I had translated from Portuguese, I think it was, and you can hear people talking in the background saying they shot the ETs and all that kind of stuff. It's dead now. And so then that disappeared, but then it's come back now, and a lot of people have gone on the UFO groups and started to put laughing faces against comments and stuff, which I've not seen before. Again, that started me thinking, right, what's going on here?
Well, why would they put laughing faces? I don't know what you mean.
Oh, ridicule. One of the main people that people don't talk about this subject is ridicule, because you're instantly called a nutcase, a crackpot, and all that kind of stuff. Because of ridicule, you don't say anything. You know, people that have had UFO experiences, they've seen craft or anything strange like that, they won't report it because of ridicule.
Jack, what about you? What did you see on the? I mean, I've seen a few videos where they're saying it's a triangle. I've seen ones where it feels like there's blue and pink orbs in the sky as well.
Yeah, because the Express had cleaned up the photograph as well, which was quite a good resource. And from what I said, it looks like, you know, one of those robot hoovers.
Yeah.
It looks like a robot hoover that's sort of.
It looks like a salad bowl. You know, if you get them metallic salad bowls, you just turn it over. It looks just like that.
What? Because that's the thing. If in the extraterrestrial community there's like, you know how people have like shit cars. What if there's shit UFOs? Where you're just like, come on, mate.
Yeah.
Get yourself. Yeah, that's a 10-year-old model, Barry. What are you playing at? You can't
actually. Skoda did make a UFO. They did.
Did they?
Yeah, back in the 60s or 70s or something like that, Skoda developed a circular craft that was a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, and that, but it was awful. They couldn't put it into mass production. It just collapsed.
Oh, shit.
Why is it not on the news though? I mean, I mean, you had a theory about it, didn't you, Steve? That, you know, you said it actually is happening, but why? I mean, it's not just the pandemic as well. What is the reason why we're not hearing about it? Why it's not made major kind of headlines across the globe? Because there's that.
Well, I think it's because of religious dogma, religion just in general, because people, I mean, look how they reacted over toilet paper when the pandemic happened. That's the reason people can't be told about aliens. Simple, really. You know, they go out and buy loads of toilet paper. If they find out someone else is coming from another planet, they're going to hoard stuff.
Yeah. Brazil, though, is seen as a kind of a hotspot for ufology, hasn't it? And sightings as well. I mean, there's a place, I don't know if you know about this, in 1996, Jack, in Virginia City. I've got to pronounce that right. Virginia City.
Right. Well, that's my next holiday destination booked.
If you get there, 2022, mate. Where 3 women were walking along and witnessed a kind of, and they've described it as a stinky, orangey, brown-skinned alien wandering about aimlessly. Have you ever read anything about that?
Oh, I have. I don't know about you, Jack.
Yeah, I've not read anything about that, but I know one of the main, well, the only recorded case of like an unexplained human mutilation was from Brazil as well. Don't Google that, by the way, if you're eating your tea or anything, because it's absolutely rank.
Google it.
It's horrible. It's horrible. But yeah, and that's one of the things for me that gets me thinking in serious terms about this whole thing, is that it seems to be concentrated on a few different countries across the globe that seem to have these recurring stories happening. That's one of the things that, you know, lends a bit of credence to it for me, is that there seems to be these hot spots.
Yeah, South America as well. They Peru, especially Mexico, a lot where there's a lot of these Mayan temples and places like that. And if you look back through all of them texts, they all depict objects in the sky and the Pleiades constellation. And this was built by that race of people, the Sumerians and all that kind of stuff. Said they came from the Pleiades, first form of writing in cuneiform text and all that kind of stuff. So they were really advanced, those kind of people. But if you look at those kind of places back in Mesopotamia and South America and the Mayans and the Incas and all that kind of stuff, all of their texts discuss that UFOs.
It's interesting as well that yesterday the top secret Trump Space Force, the X-37B secret space plane was launched. Could that have been in response to the incidents that happened in Brazil, do you think?
It may be. It definitely could have. Well, on the day, maybe a coincidence, but on the day of the Brazilian UFO crash, there was a 6.5 magnitude earthquake at Roswell. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying that these things are connected, but is Roswell being one of the hotbeds of UFO activity.
Yeah, well, there is always a connection with UFO sightings and Earth and kind of seismic events, isn't there? Why is that?
Say that again, please, Anthony.
There's always a correlation between UFO sightings and, kind of world disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes and stuff. Why do you think that is?
Just interest, I would say, because I think if most scientists, when they go and go out in the field, they're sent out to study the flora and fauna, because we're obviously more advanced as a human race than these insects that we're going to look at. And I think it's just out of interest for just flora and fauna to these people. They want to see what's going on. It happened a lot with the Japanese tsunami. There was a load of UFO sightings there.
Yeah,
and that is the thing that if you look at, I know we're going to move on to the Roswell incident later, but from the first nuclear test to the Roswell incident, there's only a 2-year gap, or a year and a half, about 18-month gap.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's no coincidence that these things really started kicking off, and the US military started taking an interest during the times that when we were experimenting with nuclear weapons, because I think that probably, if there's a certain criteria for what gets advanced extraterrestrial races interested, messing with nuclear energy might be one of those criteria.
Yeah. That's one of the things that a lot of people that have communicated with extraterrestrial beings in the past. That's one of the things that comes up. They're worried for mankind because they split the atom when they first did that. That's when they became concerned. And in fact, you can go and see particular cases. You can actually look at the cases on YouTube. There's one particular one, which we might discuss on a later show because it's great in depth, in Ruwa in Zimbabwe in about 1996, again, around that time. A UFO landed in a schoolyard in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, Ruwa, and it was seen by 62 school children and adults, and there was 2 beings on the craft. And anyway, these children, there was a film director called John Mac something or other, I can't remember his name right now. He went down and interviewed all the kids independently, and every single one of them told the same story, drew the same picture, said the same thing, that it was telepathically communicated. It showed them all the trees burning up and they were concerned for mankind and all that kind of thing. The teachers had a similar experience. And about 20 years later, he went back and interviewed all of the kids and teachers again. And the stories didn't change. These are adults now in the 30s and 40s, and they told the same story.
Interesting. Well, but it's with everything that we see. Are we seeing, you're a typical alien grey, the big eye, like Skinny Bob next to you? That is kind of the universal imagery. We got it on emojis now, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? If we talk about alien, you put the alien and it's Skinny Bob's face and stuff. Jack, what do you think an alien looks like? What do you think we're going to see? If Majay does come out, there you go, he's on screen now. What do you think we're going to see? And also, people that are watching as well, feel free to comment as well and tell us what you think. What's your view on alien life and race? What do you think it is that when disclosure happens, we're going to witness?
There's various accounts, isn't there? And if I start to scare myself by going full, getting on the belief train fully, that they don't fill me with a great amount of hope, because they all seem slightly malevolent and slightly sort of devoid of any of the characteristics that I would associate with a happy, nice human person. But I would imagine that's we're not getting the full story, are we? If they are using the same systems of government that we're using, maybe there's a higher level of unkind beings in completing these tasks of coming to Earth and doing all this sort of stuff. Maybe that's the case.
Maybe they've evolved beyond empathy, like a Tory.
Yeah, maybe they did. Do you think the Majay crash could turn out to be this century's Roswell?
Well, not if they keep covering it up. I mean, they've done a really good job of covering it up. And what I've done is I've connected with some people in Brazil over the week, and I've got a friend there who didn't even know in Brazil. She didn't know about this crash. It was me that told her about it, and then she went and researched it and came back saying, "Wow, this is incredible." So there's people in Brazil don't know about the crash, and then it took a week for the papers to get hold of it. But hopefully, like Roswell, which we're going to discuss later, maybe it's going to be Brazil's Roswell, because they've got a craft and they've got people that have seen it. The problem they've got with covering it up is everybody's talking. There's thousands and thousands of people now seeing this in Brazil, and it's just created a massive wave. Now everybody's talking about it. Finally.
Yeah. Too many witnesses. Lindsay Davis has just said a Brazilian newspaper reported the crash as a weather balloon.
No, not heard that one before, have we?
Exactly. I mean, 1947, back in Roswell Area 51, that was the main excuse for that then as well. Have we had such a, obviously there's been millions of sightings since Roswell, UFO sightings. Have we had any crashes before, Steve? Any kind of alleged crashes where we've seen such a presence? I don't know if you've seen the videos. I know Jack has, and you have as well, where there's huge, big kind of like military helicopters flying over, controlled explosions happening in the rainforest as well. Do you think?
I don't think. I've not seen any. I mean, Roswell is the most famous one, and that was dug up by a journalist in the 70s, and which created all the interest in it again. I think there might have been one or two, nothing of significance, but you can see most of them in ancient history in text and old woodcuts from Nuremberg. The Nuremberg woodcut from the 1500s is a really good one to have a look at, because that was a newspaper back in the day. So if people want to source that.
There was one a couple of years after Roswell, apparently, called the Aztec. It was again in New Mexico. But if you look into it, it seems like it was two con men trying to sell supposed alien technology. But then some people in the UFO thing, they reinvestigated the story and say it's true. So I don't know, you might want to have a look into that as well.
So Steve, you're obviously a believer in the Maget crash. What about you, Jack? Do you think it's true? Do you hope it's true?
I think I don't know maybe hope's the wrong word, because I don't know what the implications would be if I found out it was true. I'd freak myself out. But I think, I keep an open mind on all these things, because I know that deception is afoot in all areas of public life, and that why wouldn't that extend to dealings with extraterrestrial, beings? So I keep an open mind. I think I'm pretty much flitting from one way to the other, a change with the wind and the evidence.
What would you say? What would you say if you met an extraterrestrial, Jack? What would you do?
I'd probably say a Hail Mary. To be honest.
Are you a religious
man? No, but I think I would be in that moment. As a last
yeah. Would you go? So if you woke up in your bedroom one night and you were surrounded by 3 or 4 greys, and they were like, "Hey, Jack, do you want to come for a ride?" Would you go?
If they said it like that, I definitely would. But they wouldn't, would they? They'd just take me, by all accounts. They'd just
come in with us.
Yeah, exactly. So, if they said, "Do you want to go for a ride around the solar system? Let's have a laugh," then yeah, definitely. But if they said, "Can we harvest your organs and stick some up your arse?" I'd say no.
What about you, Anthony?
Well, 3 or 4 men in my room. Do you know what I mean? It's not the first time. That's a lie. That's a lie. We're going to delve into the archive now. We've been mentioning and segueing beautifully into the Roswell crash in 1947. Over in New Mexico. There's always an uneasy truth regarding the events that transpired that night, isn't there? You know what I mean? There's cover-ups and there's conflicting stories and conspiracies and so much. Was it a flying saucer? Was it a spy craft? Was it Soviets? Was it the Kardashians? And new ones are always still emerging. What would you say, Steve, are the actual agreed upon facts regarding the Roswell crash? What's the truth? What's the truth that we know as the general public?
This is what I know. This is what I've studied. This is what I've researched. This is part of me a ufology diploma that I'm doing. This is the official documents. Where are you doing
your diploma at before you finish? Where are you doing your UFO diploma at?
It's online, accredited one. You can do it. It's about 150 hours of study. It's a bit of a slog, but they cover the Roswell crash in depth, and so this is the official Roswell crash. About July the 8th, a craft was struck by lightning just over the town of Corona. It lost some debris, which because it's 2 crash sites, but it managed to stay aloft, and it went over the ridge and crashed and broke into pieces. Not completely, it was still quite intact, still disc shaped on the Foster Ranch, and it was found by the rancher there, Foster, obviously, and he then contacted the army, and then they came and took everything away and cleaned up the area, and then they released a statement and a radio statement saying that they'd found a crash disc in Roswell. And I don't know whether they said that there was 4 occupants this time, dead aliens. Apparently 1 survived. This is another fact. And what they did then was they backtracked about a week later, which is the famous story in the famous film Roswell, and Major Jesse Marcel was made to hold a weather balloon and show everybody that it was a mistake. We made a mistake. It wasn't a crash disc. It was this part of Operation Mogul or something like that.
Okay. I'm just going to rewind a little bit because mine and Jack's eyes nearly fell out when you mentioned that the town where the craft was struck was called Corona.
Surely it's a coincidence. They must have known. They must have known.
It's all connected, bro.
It is. What happened to the alien bodies and the debris, though? Because people say, I mean, I watched Dark Skies. You got me onto Dark Skies, and I downloaded that the other night and watched that, the TV series. And there's a scene in that where they pull out an alien grey from a kind of a metal kind of cabinet, from a mortuary cabinet. One of the guys, one of the men in black, as it were, had on like a kind of a weird necker chain where he opened it up and he took out a small piece of debris that he said, I mean, this was drama, this was fiction, but a piece of debris that then unfolded and created in his hand and floated as well. Is there proof of actual debris before we go on to the bodies?
Well, not proof for us. There was proof for the army. I think they took it to Fort Worth, maybe, and they took all the debris and the alien bodies. And apparently, Truman was contacted, and he came down and observed it all.
Okay, Truman, the president.
Yeah, President Truman, and Roosevelt as well had something to do with it.
Because the presidents have always been linked with obviously because they need to be told as well. So you mentioned Truman, you mentioned Roosevelt. Kennedy was highly involved as well, and there's a conspiracy regarding, his involvement and his assassination as well. Do you think the current president of the United States, Jack, Donald Trump, do you think he would be alerted to the presence of disclosure and also of alien beings?
I think he is an alien. Yeah. I think he's that stinky orange alien that they found wandering around Brazil aimlessly. Yeah. You were looking for
top big one.
Looking for a wall to build.
He was looking for President Bolsonaro so they could start going on about how they hated various groups of people. No, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because after this incident as well, like Truman was always going on about flying saucers in his briefings as well, and that seemed to correlate, I think, with a post Roswell scenario, and he started mentioning flying saucers more and more in his briefings. He was interested in it, I think.
Yeah. With what do we not know, Steve, about Area 51? What's one of the conspiracies that you believe? One of kind of the furthest left of centre conspiracies that you've heard, that you've latched onto with regards to Area 51 and what's there?
Good question. Well, basically, they got the craft. They reversed the technology, anti-gravitational technology, and they put the alien bodies in some cryogenic thing. And one of them was alive. Apparently, it was called Skinny Bob or J-Rod, and that was kept on base. It was just hanging around there, like Paul, the movie kind of thing. Yeah. It's based on that. Yeah. So I think on the extreme side is that they caught the craft. They've got alien bodies. They're in communication with the Greys, and they have black projects which are based on the technology they got from the Roswell crash.
You see, because what I've read of J-Rod, he was meant to be quite a good geezer, which flies in the face of the narrative that they're all not very nice, nasty.
He loves strawberry ice cream. He loves strawberry. Have you heard that one? He really enjoys strawberry ice cream.
Brilliant.
So, obviously, you mentioned J-Rod, and we've seen you can see the pictures online of J-Rod. Do you think it's a puppet? I mean, do you think it's a kind of paper mache kind of doll that they've made, a mannequin, or
I think
in an outfit or something?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he's always popping up in some prosthetic or other, isn't he, Warwick Davis? I think the interesting one for me is that it's a video on YouTube. You can get it up actually from a 1991 documentary called "Interview with an Alien," where the alien starts choking to death during the interview, and they shine a torch in its eyes. And it seems to reflect in a way that you would think a prosthetic or a sort of animatronic thing wouldn't be able to, and is sort of looks like pupil dilation. So that's one of the interesting examples that I think maybe, and no one's ever really disproved that one either, to my knowledge.
Yeah. It's easier to disprove it after about to come up with a hoax after 1995, 96 because of the software. If anything before that, probably a little bit more believable.
Have we got all the files on Roswell? Are we able to access all the files on Roswell, Steve? Or are they still are they still under embargo, or are they still kind of completely out of bounds and stuff? Will there be a period of time when we can look at it?
I hope so. I think there's bits out there that they've released and people have read between the lines, but there's not much you can get apart from conjecture and hearsay with it. But you've got to go off the initial account when they found a crash disk and they found alien bodies, and then they took them away, and then the next week they released a statement saying that it was a weather balloon. They sort of realised what they had and covered it up. So you've got to go off that initial one, really.
It did interest me though, just coming from the other side of the argument, that they eventually, when they did declassify it, I think about sometime in the early 90s, like maybe late 80s, early 90s, they said it was a Russian spying thing that they couldn't talk about because of the Cold War, which seemed to shut quite a few people up.
Yeah. Lisa, Lindsay, sorry, just mentioned. I don't know if we've got a question. What are your opinions on the Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980? That's from Colin Mayhew. Colin A. Mayhew.
Oh, well, hi, Colin. Well, I've got a couple of opinions on that because it's something I've studied from when it first came out, left at Eastgate, and I've listened to everybody's stories. I've watched all the documentaries. I've watched them again and again and again. Everything new that comes out. And my problem with the Rendlesham Forest, I think something did happen, but because the UFO circuit, the lecture circuit, is now, you can make quite a lot of money on that. And I've watched certain people's, soldiers that was apparently there. I've watched their story develop as it's become more and more popular, so that it rings true to me. I think something did happen, but it's been embellished to create an income for the person that says that they touched the craft and they got binary code, which turns out it was coordinates to High Brazil off the coast of Ireland. And now I'm suddenly going, really? I mean, I'm struggling anyway with it in the first place. I mean, I enjoy it. That something came down and the tape, if you've heard it, you can hear the actual recording of them walking through the forest going, it's weird, there's something coming, it's heading toward us now, there's a beam hit the floor. That's been going for years and years and years. I heard that 20 odd years ago, and that's never changed. So whatever happened at Rendlesham happened over a series of nights. It didn't just happen once, it happened over a couple of nights, and then people saying, come running and saying it's back, but then stories start to develop. But I remember the original stories, so I stick with those. I think definitely something went down in Rendlesham Forest.
Is Rendlesham part of a military base or anything? Is there anything near to Rendlesham, Steve?
It was a nuclear base. They kept nukes there. The Americans kept nuclear missiles there, which obviously, if you know your stuff about aliens, are very keen on nuclear silos.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We had a comment from Lisa as well, who said that aliens created COVID-19. The aliens have started. There she is, Lisa. They have started COVID-19. Jack, what's your take on that?
I think that is probably, hopefully, not true, and that they come in peace rather than with flu-like symptoms.
Yeah,
yeah, cough into your elbow.
Yeah.
But I think here's the deal, right? So let's say the aliens exist and they want to take over planet Earth, right? But they're only quite small individuals, very easily pushed away or broken or whatever. They can be damaged, okay? And so if I was an alien and I was coming towards Earth to take over planet Earth, I'd want to weaken its populace. So the best way to do that is to send in a virus and wipe out loads of its people and weaken its infrastructure and its monetary system. So everybody's indoors and all that kind of thing. And then you send the ships in and the motherships and all that. That's what I'd do if I was an alien race that's come to take over a planet.
Even if I've got the flu, I'm knocking the shit out of something that's only 3 foot high.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah,
I think that's the thing.
It could be a tall.
I'd take it round to my mate's house by the neck.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's any taller than that, then I would have problems. But I think at about 3 foot, I can just maybe get a couple of digs in.
What if it was a hot female one? What if it was a kind of a hot alien? You know, like the female gremlin in Gremlins 2. It's quite sexy with the red hair. What if she was like that? Would you have a crack? Would you kind of take her out?
Well, I would.
If you read the Book of Enoch, they've done it to us, so why not do it the other way around?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of giants, you what?
I said they were giants as well.
So you won't be grabbing that round the net, Jack. Sorry.
No, well, I'll just be saying, fair enough, mate. Take what you want. You know, you win.
Yeah.
Anal probe, whatever you want.
Here's the goal. Yeah.
It's interesting because when you were talking then about kind of this idea that, as Lisa said, aliens started COVID-19, there's a similarity to that fantastic scene in Prometheus and in when it was in Covenant, in the second Alien, the recent one, where the ship came down and put the spores all over the engineers. And when I first saw that, when I first read about COVID-19, and that's the first thing that came into my head. So there is an element of that for me, and truth in that as well, that I think, I wonder if there is a link between that as well, because I remember reading on one of these, there's a forum called Godlike Productions that I've read for years and years, and I was reading about COVID back in the early days, back in late December, and they were saying that it was a cover-up. It was either one of two things. It was either one of three things, either a complete financial New World Order reboot, the asteroid that was passing Earth, it was that to get us all inside. But the main thing was it was to announce disclosure. And there's a huge correlation between everything that's going on now to the sightings. I mean, what is it in Belgium alone, Jack? 87 sightings of UFOs just in March.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. And if you Google, because I was doing last night when we were doing the briefing, I Googled UFOs in relation to coronavirus. That there was 5 major publications that have led with top-line pieces about UFOs in relation to corona in the last 2 months, which I'm I think on the more skeptical side of things here, and even that freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's quite there's something happening there. That's quite a popular thing, and obviously it could just be that the sort of culture is carrying it forward, and one person writes an article and then someone else writes an article. But that did stick out to me, I think.
Steve, what's your take on it?
On the coronavirus.
On coronavirus with a link to possible, to the fact that UFO. I mean,
they're going up.
They're going up and up and up. And also we're told to look at the sky recently because we've had what was it? The lipid comet, the comets that were coming over. We have 2 lots of those.
Yeah.
And also Elon Musk's satellites. We're looking up.
And Space Force as well in the last week. That's just slipped by.
Yeah.
And
also as well. Sorry, Jack.
So no, it's all right. It just seems to be a popular thing at the moment. Something seems to be happening.
Steve.
Well, I believe that the if you look back, there's a thing called panspermia, and it relates to comets passing and asteroids and all that kind of thing. And there's proof now that these things carry bacteria, and there is a correlation between the human race making advances between certain objects in the Earth and bringing new bacteria and stuff like that. So panspermia can play a big part in bringing new viruses and things like that. It could be related to that.
Explain panspermia for us. I remember having a conversation with you about it. Wouldn't you say, isn't there where octopus and squid, are they part of panspermia?
No, they could be cephalopods.
I believe cephalopods. Yeah.
Well, anything with 9 hearts and 3 brains. Come on.
Maybe that's an interesting idea, though. They saw various shows of aggression on the South China Sea and thought, we can't have that. That'll be nuclear war, and then sent something down to keep us all inside and stop any sort of military aggression. That's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah. What's your take on Space Force, Steve? I mean, the fact that, that there's so much money, there's so much billions and trillions of dollars are being pumped into Space Force. And literally yesterday, it kind of went under the cloak of COVID-19. We announced the rocket going off and stuff. What's your take on that?
Well, what is Space Force for? Is it to protect that way or that way? Which way? What's it doing?
I don't know. Jack, what do you think?
I think it's the kind. My logical, rational hat on, I'd say it's the kind of centerpiece that someone like Trump would want to define his presidency. I sent a big rocket into space. Right. How great am I, sort of thing. But then also,
like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. But then also, you've got to look at it. The idea that they've pumped billions of dollars worth of money into a folly is not. There must be some motive behind it, but nobody seems clear on what that is.
Do you think we could cope with an alien invasion?
Oh, no, I don't think we can. I think if tomorrow they've landed, I think it's chaos, absolute chaos.
I mean, as you said about the bog rolls, didn't you? Look what happened with the toilet rolls and the pasta. So what are they going to do with the 40,000 alien greys landing on?
What in your research, Steve, has been, because I know there's been a few instances purported of battles. What's happened, and what do you think? Do you think there definitely is an aggressive agenda?
I think there's an aggressive agenda with certain types of aliens because there's supposed to be about 4 different races, and I think maybe an early alien race came, inhabited Earth, and then another one came, and they started to fight over who was dominating planet Earth. And that, if you look back in the Mahabharata and the Hindu texts, there's these flying craft called Vimanas. Bimanas, it's spelled Vimana, and these are large, absolutely huge, sort of triangular, sort of city-sized aircraft that were laser guns and all that kind of stuff, and massive explosions. And these things were documented. And if you go back and look at where one of the main battles took place a couple of thousand years ago in Mohenjo-Daro, all of the rocks and the city, the village, and all that is all turned to glass, it's petrified, and the only thing that can do that is a nuclear explosion. So there's things like that, that you can look at.
And there's so many things in ancient texts about predicting a sort of accounts of cataclysmic events and stuff that all seem to go on around the same time. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian texts, the Bible, they all have this big flood that happens, which seems, if you're going on the alien theory, seems to be some sort of reset button that they've hit to stop whatever they were doing.
Sterilize the planet. That's what the planet sterilization event, it was in Yucatan, Mexico, and one theory I've heard is that aliens were observing the planet, but it was just full of dinosaurs, T-Rexes everywhere, and giants everywhere that were just carnivorous and all that kind of stuff. And you really, as a small alien species, you don't need that. But if you're technologically advanced, you can actually go and sit it out while you go and sterilize a planet by blanking it out from the sun, then come back and repopulate.
Yeah, and then we get into the whole thing of hybrid engineering, don't we? Alien and simian hybrid engineering and all that stuff. Plenty of stuff that we can talk about in future episodes. And what we're going to be talking about next week, Steve?
Well, obviously we've not delved into the Travis Walton abduction, but there's other stuff we can talk about. There's abduction cases I think are very interesting, and they're well documented. And there's also a lot of other landings in the UK, because I've done my original podcast, Project Greybook. There's been some really interesting UK events in Broadhaven, for instance, in 1977, which made the news. A group of kids, it landed again. A craft landed close to where they were playing, and one of the kids climbed the fence and went over to it. Now, I managed to track this lad down. He's in his 40s now, and it ruined his life completely because he was on the news. He was known as Alien Kid, and people took the piss out of him constantly and everything. But I managed to get him in and do an interview on my podcast, and it's really interesting. He's got a great story to tell. He saw it. They all witnessed it. There was loads of them, and it made the news. So that's something we might cover.
Yeah, well, Colin's just come back and said maybe David Icke was right all along.
The thing I like about David Icke is that he goes on about economic deprivation and then charges you £12.50 a month to read his website. Brilliant, solid one there, Dave.
He's been served his desserts lately, hasn't he, Mr. Icke? Jack, thank you for coming on. Jack, any final words? Anything you've got to plug? What you up to now?
No worries. Yes, I'm doing coronavirus stuff, so I'm just inside. I run a charity podcast every Friday at either 5 or 8 p.m. We've got Frankie Boyle on this week. You can find details of that on my Twitter at FatJacko. It's all in aid of a local children's hospice. And Frankie's a man for out there conspiracies, so there might be some alien chat in the podcast. Who knows?
Fantastic. We've got forward to that. Well, on behalf of me and Steve, we thank you for coming on Project Greybook.
We also thank you as always. Cheers,
cheers, Jack.
For getting involved as well. If there's anything you want us to discuss, please put it in the comments box. Please follow us on Facebook. Check us out on jokepit.com as well. We're on there as well. Final word from you, Steve. Sign us off.
Yeah, well, I think people also. I run a podcast. If anybody's got any interesting stories that they'd like to talk about, we're ready to believe you. So just contact me at timebanditman@googlemail.com, and we'll stick you on the podcast.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, guys. We'll see you next Monday. Cheers, guys.